Hello, welcome to the Fraudcast. I think you have all joined us at one point or another before. Lots of familiar faces. But just for our recording purposes, welcome the Fraudcast, weekly get-together that we host for e-commerce fraud and risk professionals such as yourselves to share trends, what we're seeing, what's going on, what you're working on, getting good advice from other professionals on the challenges that you're facing. And I think that's really important, especially now as we're like prepping for the holidays and they're coming up fast. Participation during the session, you guys know the deal. Feel free to post in the chat or come off mute and participate throughout. Feel free to interject. That's totally welcome. This is not a regular webinar session. This is supposed to be a conversation amongst all of you guys. So please do participate. If you're able to be on camera with us, we love it. If you're not, that's totally cool. You can hang back and listen in. And heads up, we do record these sessions to share with folks who aren't able to make it to our regular session today. And with that being said, I'm going to hand things over to Vito.
What is up, everybody? Happy Wednesday. So good to see you. We got a big one today. I'm not going to bloviate. I'm just going to jump right into it. I got a question for you. I'm going to put you on the spot real quick while I got your attention. I just learned how to do this. It's like old dog, new tricks kind of deal. Where are you at right now? We talk about this a lot, but I just want to get like a little bit of a temp check. We've talked about this for weeks now. Like, are you starting to see orders that are coming through your platform via things like ChatGPT, Claude, Perplexity, et cetera, et cetera? Do you think you're seeing orders, but you're getting like, or are you just like, who are you, sir? This is a Wendy's. What's going on here? So I see the numbers, the early results are coming in where we haven't seen anything. And there's probably going to be a glaring asterisk next to that one. And our guest today might help you to put that asterisk right next to it and kind of make you feel like maybe there's something you don't know that you don't know. And also to give you a little bit of clarity, I'm going to end the poll in 3, 2, 1. We are sitting at 50% of everyone who has been, Shelly, we didn't even get to poll you about where you're at. Shelly, I know you're going to tell us where you're at, though, so that's going to be good. We're going to come right back to you, Shelly. You're going to your own poll. But it looks like 50% of people who have responded said they haven't seen any agentic orders in the last few days, weeks, and months, with 1 or 4 people saying maybe. Without further ado, though, I have the perfect person to speak with today. I'd like to introduce to you our very special guest, my new friend, your soon-to-be new friend, the founder of Skyfire, the one and only Craig DeWitt. Craig, how you doing?
I am doing great. I'm so glad to be here. Everybody, I'm going to do my best to match the energy from the host. Okay, so I got my coffee here and ready to talk AI agent payments, checkout, and a little bit of fraud.
I love it. Coffee up, nicotine pouch up. If you got it, there we go. So Shelly's firmly in the might category. A couple of people are in the maybes. A lot of people are like the hunts. Craig, can you give us a little bit, before we even introduce you, I like things going backwards and stuff. What even is agentic commerce? Like, how should we think about it from the 101 level? What are we even like really talking about?
Yeah, so at least what we see is that the new agentic commerce is really one where it used to be human beings directly on a website making purchase decisions and then facilitating a checkout. And now you have kind of player 3 in the mix, where you have an intermediary between the individual, or what we call the principal agent, to checkout or store. And it's that intermediary that's doing a lot of the thinking, product selection, cart creation, and then coming up here, actually facilitating a checkout with a credit card, right?
So are you just like a hobbyist? Are you just kind of like into this on the side? Or it sounds like you do something very related to this field. So why don't you tell us what you got going on at Skyfire? And really, like, who is Craig? Why does Craig do this? What drives you? Because I get the excitement from you, regardless of the coffee. I get the excitement for you around this space. What kind of drives you to tackle this problem? What is the problem, and what are you doing about it?
Cool. Yeah, I'll start with Skyfire. So Skyfire is an identity and payments platform for AI agents. agent platforms. And really what we allow them to do is to deliver identity information on the agent and the principal, and to have payment options for actually facilitating a checkout. And so just like going through that, I started off with the checkout side. So how do you let an agent actually facilitate a checkout? A lot of things were missing there. Like how can you actually input card details in a PCI compliant fashion? It seemed like an intractable problem at the time. But then before that, like there's a lot of stuff that was just hitting us in the face before we could even get to checkout, or at least give these platforms the ability to get to checkout. And that is, there's about 30 years of anti-bot protections that are wrapped around every single e-commerce site right now. And that starts with the WAFs and the CDNs and the bot managers. So think like your Akamai's, your Sequences, your Data Domes, just a big list of them, human, big in the e-commerce side. And so those are identifying programmatic checkout, and they're killing it with a 403. That 403 code is like the digital equivalent to a middle finger. It's like you're kind, not welcome here, right? Now, if you can get past that, then you have another problem, and that is like, well, at checkout, you've got these great solutions that are designed to block fraud at the checkout. But if I look at pretty much every platform that's using us, when they switch over to the card input like service, they're going to switch their IPs, right? So it's like if you're looking at a platform that's based in Ohio that creates a checkout, and then when it gets the card input, it switches over to Amazon East, like that's one of the greatest indicators of fraud, right? So flashing red, like no, thank you, and then you have to put the card in a PCI compliant way. So Skyfire offers a complete solution to the agents that gives them an agent identity that gets through or associated with the bot blockers and WAFs, that works with the risk providers at checkout to actually have this KYA or know your agent, and then a really cool way of actually inputting credit cards through what's called Visa Intelligent Commerce, which is a PCI compliant way for agents to have single use cards. And so that together is something that we're seeing a ton of excitement on, especially over the last couple months. And we're starting to work directly with merchants as well. So that's a little bit about Skyfire.
Can we do this for like 3 hours? I got a lot of questions, and maybe a couple of people here have some more questions, because maybe some of you have seen this. I've done it. Maybe you've done it. If you've done it, I'd love to hear from you. But when I went to do an agentic purchase on the NBA store, I thought I was the cat's meow. I thought I was just going to plug it in, sit back, sip on my iced tea and go. But it was much more manual than I expected. You know, I had to like plug my credit card in, like you're talking about. There's no like PCI compliant way to do it. And just from my flesh and bones, like humanness, I was a little scared to even go down the route of like, how do I load my card into ChatGPT or something like that? Is that really because we've seen, and I've got my good friend Mike Cassidy here, Mike and I were just talking about this, we've seen that there's lower conversion rates for agentic than for your traditional card not present payments that are done through a human. Is that the real barrier? Is that there's no, at least from the user side, at least from the buyer side, that there's an extensive amount of friction between me making an order happen, me having to get the credit card out? Is that integration piece really like the make or break?
Yes. So like the current agentic flows are pretty clunky as you've gone through. So not only do you have failures, but you still have a human typing in the credit card details. A lot of that's because of the card network rules, right? Of like a platform not being able to save and then transmit card to a third party, right? Because like everything's designed for human to site, right? And not really this concept of like an intermediary there. And so I think a big barrier right now is the use cases, the experiences kind of suck because there are some significant barriers, right? And they're also constrained because it doesn't really use the internet today. A lot of like through ChatGPT and things like that, they're bespoke integrations, right? Handshake deals with merchants to allow it to be used. I think the big unlock becomes when an agent can actually, in a safe and compliant way, have a user's credit card. And I can talk about that. Card networks are all over this. They're working on this, and we're working with them to make that a possibility. And then two, instead of doing bespoke integrations to the platform, let these agents actually access the internet. And we think the solution there is, with all of these partnerships we have with the bot blockers and some of the risk providers, is the agent has an identity token that they can deliver along that value chain that ties together the entire experience. And that's going to change the conversion rates a lot of the conversion rates are so low, at least what I see, is because so much of the agent traffic today is just web scraping, going out and trying to rip prices from somebody, doing competitive analysis. And merchants don't like that. Server costs go up, ads aren't surfaced, purchases don't happen. That's a big part of the identity piece of like, I want to know who the principal is who's coming to my site. That means like, I want to know a verified email address, and I want to know if there's a card on file to where this could convert into a payment. And that's a lot of things that Skyfire provides.
I want to go to Ryan real quick, because Ryan, I saw you nod and you had a question about identity. Craig, you touched on that. Do you have a follow-up there, Ryan, about determining that identity and how it evolves?
And I'm just thinking like super broad, like 50,000 foot view here, but like just coming from the identity realm, that's kind of where my mind goes. Like we still are in a flux of how do I know this person doing that action is authentic, is valid, is real? Should I trust that action? And now we're equipping an agentic AI with that same task. How do I determine that that's a valid AI for this individual, Ryan McDonald?
Great question. This gets into something that we call KYA, or Know Your Agent. And where we actually started, Ryan, is we started with the identity of the agent itself, right? And I think that's where a lot of the minds are. But we started there probably 18 months ago. And what we found is that merchants and risk solutions, they care about the platform that it originates from. Like, they want to know if it's Perplexity, ChatGPT, or like a Consumer Reports, which is a cool use case. So I'd like to talk about that. But they really care about the identity of the individual. That's what everybody wants, right? Like nobody actually, and this might be, for at least folks, nobody actually cares about the technical identifier outside of being able to reconcile, okay, there's an IP address on file, and I know that this agent is who they say they are, but that's kind of bread and butter stuff right there. So what we do is we will have partnerships with the agent platforms or directly onboard the user itself, doing like a standard KYA process of like, which is like KYA. Yeah, I'm using KYA. KYA is our term for like know your customer, know your business, know your agent. But the key piece is the business and consumer identity that's associated with that. And that identity is just a standard web token. So a job that can be passed through a web. And what's important is that it's passed through the header of an HTTPS web request, which means your CDN can inspect that and see like, okay, I see this is coming from a Perplexity, or I see that this is coming from a Consumer Reports, and I see there's a valid email address. And then I can inspect that and see like, oh, there's a Visa card on file for this user. I can't see what it is, but it's a Skyfire signed token. I know that this might actually result in a transaction. This is also important beyond just e-commerce in that a lot of the sites are blocking crawling in general. And so a lot of the ways that our tokens are being used is just web access in general. Right. So like if you're trying to search some other site or whatever, your agent can now go out and do that, which puts together a full context of what the user is actually trying to accomplish. And that's really important for providers like Skyfire, because now we can take that and have this telemetry of like, okay, this makes sense, or like, this does not make sense to purchase these things. Last thing on this is the other side outside of e-commerce that we're excited about is we see a lot of like experimentation on MCP. So like API-based checkout is something I've always been really excited about. That is what I think the future is for this agentic flow. But it's more of a longer term thing just because of the ubiquity of websites. But that standard JWT can be used to pass through API requests to an MCP server as well. And we're doing stuff with auth providers right now where instead of hitting Akamai to get access, you can now hit like Okta to do a custom token exchange to now have API access to the servers, right? And that is an open protocol that we've put out there because we think that's the way things are headed.
Craig, I want to go down that rabbit hole real quick. You said the ubiquity of websites. Are websites going to be like the vinyl records of the past, where it's kind of just like a nice to have or like some sort of showpiece, but in reality, commerce can be driven through API? Is that, I mean, I know I just heard some talk about it. How do you feel about it? I would love to hear that.
So I'm not clear on what the time frame is. My time frame for these things has always underestimated how fast this market moves. But I can see a time, at least in my kids' lifetime, when I'm like, hey, this thing is called a browser. And look, I used to type like www and just know the site that I had to go to. And look, oh, it still comes up. This was called Amazon. Like I could see that happening. Now that like, but there's such a, there's just such this incredible network effect of websites that could take a very, very long time to get there. But I will say, at least from what we see, agent API access through MCPs is a higher fidelity experience with greater probability of success than ever plugging and chugging into a web UI form, even with our KYA tokens, is going to provide.
Readability is there, the translatability is there, and you kind of avoid these like significantly not as described. Like I didn't know I was getting this. It's all just like crystal clear.
It's crystal clear. And like maybe like if you think about what these agents do today, like a real agentic flow via the website, primarily being one where the agent goes to that website. So essentially uses our KYA token to check in with the bot provider and says like, hey, I'm a valid user. Let me into the site. Once they're there, they have to navigate like the entire product catalog to figure things out. That's clunky. And that's also very expensive. It's very expensive for the website as well. And so one of the things that I'm excited about is I see these things coming out for like these APIs to product catalogs. But the difficulty is like nobody wants their product catalog API-ified just out there for the whole world, right? And that gets back to the KYA token. How do you give credentials to the APIs? Well, the agent does a custom token where it's like, hey, Craig DeWitt, I'm Craig at Skyfire at XYZ. I have some context of a payment history. Give me the API credentials because I'm a valid buyer. Now I can hit that. Now I can select my products and check out. That is where I think it goes, but timeline could be years just because of the network effects the internet has of web pages.
If you're like me out there, you're getting excited about this, thinking about that whole this used to be Amazon. That's like me going on GeoCities right now and pulling up all my high school stuff. You don't want to see that. But let's take a quick step back because Craig, you saw the numbers, you saw the poll results. About half of us here are kind of like haven't really seen anything. So if you could put yourself in those shoes, Craig, and you're kind of sitting right at checkout. You're very cross-thready person in fraud and payments where you're working with marketing and product and everybody else, and you have all the insights. What would you be kind of on the lookout for if you're in that I'm not sure if it's going on right now phase? And what can happen over the next 4 to 6 to 12 weeks that can be a eureka moment, either in a good or a bad way for you, especially if you're like a little, I don't know what I don't know.
Yeah, well, it's tough. I'm in the space 100% of the time, and it's moving so quickly that it can be difficult to keep your finger on the pulse of what's going on. So like, I'd say generally creating relationships with folks early to kind of like know what's going on. There are a lot of folks that reach out to us to be like, hey, what should we be doing here? Happy to tell this this group as well. If you are curious in terms of like, hey, what's going on in this space, I would talk to the folks at your company who do like SEO and web traffic, because I will guarantee they've seen a change. We just by happenstance, we happen to do some stuff for agents being able to pay. So that KYA token can also be used as like a micro payment to get access to content. Just as a side note, I talked to publications that almost everybody on this call would know. And over the last 6 months, some of them have seen traffic directly to the websites drop by 70%, which means that ads have dropped by 70%. And there's a bunch of alarm bells going off with like how their business is going to survive. And what that means is that the interface for the internet is actually starting to shift a little bit to where the discovery now is not obviously coming through Google search. People are now able to go somewhere and directly get the answer. And so if the search functionality is moving to a new interface, like a chat interface, the purchase is going to change as well. Like that purchase intent is going to change as well. You're probably not seeing a bunch of purchases today because it's almost impossible unless you do like a bespoke integration, right? And so the steps that I would take is, one, you need to understand the agents that are trying to access your commerce site in the first place. That's why a lot of the folks that work with us start with this identity token as a way of gaining access and understanding the platforms that are coming in, and then the agents as well. The second thing is like agents can't really, again, unless it's a bespoke integration, can't really pay with a credit card. That's going to change pretty quickly here with what the card networks are coming out with like Visa's Intelligent Commerce, which is a really cool way. And there's a lot of fraud aspects here. A really cool way of agents having access to a user's credit card and then being able to create one-time use cards off of that and then plug that into the UI. That is very soon to be available to the world. It's something I'm very excited about because it's something we've been working on aggressively at Skyfire.
A lot to chew on there. So I want to hear from y'all real quick. Craig and I are going to take a little sip of our water while we hear from y'all. you've been in this spot of like not knowing what you don't know. We've just got some great intel on there into like how to cross thread a little bit, kind of get in with your SEO and your web search folks. You're seeing the death of the internet, so to speak, and in many ways for us in that kind of, or the traditional internet, as a website at the very least, for those of us in that checkout flow, in that payment position, we're also seeing the inability to upsell or to suggest sell if that's going on as well. How do you feel about this? And please, I would love it. Shelly, this is kind of like wheelhouse for you. I mean, Susie School of Communications, who are you talking to? Are you starting those conversations just yet? What are you waiting for in terms of like a eureka, here's my like little gold basket to bring to y'all to start this conversation? Or are you still going to be like, hey, Black Friday's going to come around. Maybe then I'll have some more data. Where are you at, y'all? Just would love to hear from you.
I think still in the learning stage, honestly. I don't want to put the cart before the horse here, but I'm still trying to learn how it all processes, because when they come to me and ask me questions, I want to make sure I have an understanding of where we're at. Do I have any matrix out there? Do I have any numbers? And I'm still in is this a thing in my world? I know it is, but I don't know where the impact is yet and how to translate that. So I really think I'm still just in the baby building stages.
I'm wondering about, for us internally, and Craig, I'd love to know if you've heard something around this line, that kind of like missed revenue piece, where, as you mentioned earlier, you'll see someone originating out of Ohio, and then all of a sudden they're on an AWS server, and your manual review teams or your rules or whatever you've got in place are just like, duh, fraud. They're supermanning, they're flying all over the world. And since we lack really, most people, if not, everyone on this call kind of lacks that ability to identify, they might just see that as like par for the course. Like, yeah, we stopped fraud. Have you done any work with helping, Craig, business kind of identify what they've kind of declined and left on the table and saw as fraud that is truly not, and like what those kind of revelations have been like?
Yeah, so we work with a company called Forder, which does a lot of that detection piece right now. And I think broadly what we're seeing, and again, this gets back to like the card piece not really being there. We're seeing a huge increase in agents accessing sites and creating carts, but then things start falling over at the checkout phase, right? And the biggest problem that any of these bot managers would tell you is that because of the kind of telemetry that you have there, it's impossible to tell if these were valid transactions or nefarious transactions. And so because of the lack of like identity being passed through, we don't actually know. I think the aha moment is when these card networks allow an actual like valid way of an agent having access to a credit card. Because today it's all like spit and glue, and like you have to do these proxy services and stuff like that. But not spit and glue. Duct tape and bubble gum. Spit and glue. I don't know what people would use.
MacGyver, he did both. MacGyver did both.
Yeah. The release of this card stuff is going to be fundamental, because I think you're going to start seeing like cards getting input in weird ways, and if there's no identity associated with that, it's going to be a judgment call on whether or not you're missing sales. You will see though, and this is like ties back to the SEO side. I think just like mobile, this is a brand new interface, and I definitely get the points earlier of like, is this a thing? Well, like it's in the shortest amount of time. I mean, if you look at the adoption of this interface, it's outrageous, right? It's outpacing like the initial proliferation of the internet and cell phones, right? And so you saw how those interfaces changed commerce. Like without a doubt, this is changing commerce. There's a couple missing pieces. Skyfire provides some of them. The card networks provide some of them. When those lock in, I can tell you the kind of conversations that we're having with large merchants. When those lock in, I would just be really careful not to like miss mobile with missing kind of these, agentic potential access. And great segue.
We didn't even practice this, y'all. It's just we're just simpatico this morning. Yes, and shout out Phelim, shout out Mike on this one. That adoption level. I mean, if you told Craig earlier, we were talking about kind of things being shifted immediately into sixth gear. If you told me about this in April, I would be like, get lost. Like, what are you doing? But I mean, more than smartphones, more than social media, more than cloud computing. Oh, kind of wild, its own context. And at the same time, this is the troubling bit. And I think this is where that identity piece comes in. What people are seeing as risk or the aversion to it, and maybe the lack of clarity into it, is only going up as this all goes up. To me, as someone in risk and fraud, and I might be an outlier here, I see it as lost revenue and not like, we're under attack. Although, as I showed in my videos, like ATO just becomes so much easier in this. I like spit and glue. In this spit and glue setup we have now, we're just kind of throwing whatever you want at it. So we do need that. And this is another maybe why you should worry, why you should care. This is from our own data here. We've seen in the last quarter alone a significant spike in AOV, where it's not just let me try and get a $20 deal and like see if this works. I'm doing my big stuff through this now because maybe it's a little bit of savvy shopping. Maybe it's a little bit of like, I think this is cool. I trust it. Maybe that trust level is there. So wanted to flash those on the screen. Craig, when you saw some of that really quickly, like in the eye exam I just gave you, did anything like activate the almonds for you at all? Was there something like maybe that AOV piece? I think that's pretty cool.
That is super cool. That syncs to what I'm also seeing on the startup side, which I think just being here in San Francisco, I see a bunch of like, there's an army of startups out there that are building their own agentic shopping agents for these tailored use cases. There's a ton of money going into it. And I just see this coiled up spring. I'm surprised that the numbers have advanced as far as they have, to be honest with you, with how clunky the current experiences are. But the appetite, both from investors, the appetite from like people building really cool experiences, is completely coiled. And it's just waiting for a couple of these unlocks to really, I think, be a major percentage of GDP in a short amount of time. But then again, I'm talking my own book because my business is based on that.
Well, let me bring your book down to the Texas Panhandle a little bit, because I thought I lived in BFE, as we like to call it, but they're building the world's largest nuclear powered data center right down the block from me, about 26 miles away. And that is all going to be AI driven. So that I feel that spring coiling as well. I like to see myself not as a host of an amazing podcast here, but as somebody who gets people promoted and helps people out in their worlds. So I think what we're talking about here, Craig, is Shelley's point. Like, okay, I'm still trying to learn. I'm still trying to figure it out. If you put the legwork in today, and if you get hip to this conversation now, you will be part of that next big move. And I'm not selling snake oil here. I've got nothing to sell. I've got nicotine pouches and baseballs. Okay. But I think that's it. That's at least where I'm kind of putting my chips in and what I'm feeling. If you've got any, Craig, would love to hear. Do you have any sort of advice then for folks in payments, folks in fraud, folks even in customer experience and customer support about like where they should be looking, networking out to, perhaps even in like a cross-threaded capacity, how they should see themselves within their own organizations a little bit differently? Would love anything you've got there.
Well, just from a personal perspective, especially in large organizations, there's a lot of really, really smart people who are saying the same thing that you are in terms of like, this is the interface. And so I think there are a lot of just personal opportunities to be associated with this within an organization, because this is going to be like the real juicy, like, hey, this is growing within our businesses in terms of revenue. The places to start, I think it's maybe I can save some pain for folks, is that the place to start probably isn't the checkout right now. It's everything that comes before that. And so it's, how do the agents get access to the website, and how do the agents get through some of the fraud detections that have happened. And so I am selling something, like if you need help with that or you need solutions, like Skyfire can help you with that. But if my demeanor has really turned you off on this, you can do it yourself, figure it out yourself as well. And I would start with saying, like, talk to your bot managers and see like, hey, I need to put together a story internally for like what my traffic is. I bet you will see an incredible spike over the last 6 months of what they call programmatic or unidentified bot traffic And you won't really know what that is, but at least you have a sense of like, wow, if I converted 1% of this, that would be a substantial lift in my sales. The second thing is there are a lot of awesome fraud providers. There's one of them on this podcast right now. They most likely can give you a viewpoint into what's going on at that kind of like checkout piece to see those kind of failures. And that gives you an idea of what's going on. And then when you're actually ready to like turn on the checkout, that's definitely a place that I can help with. And I imagine there's going to be other folks kind of following Skyfire shortly here in terms of the things they need to do. So that's where I would start. I wouldn't start at checkout. Start what they're hitting right now. That gives you a good sense of the opportunity. And then you can kind of follow that funnel to how do we actually do the buys.
Your CISO, the donuts need to show up on their desk ASAP because I got to quote him. I quote him a lot. Henry Prawl was forward thinking over at Open Table back in the day. Henry said to me, there's 3 mysteries in the universe. Where did we come from? Where are we going? And why, when I block bots, does revenue go down? I think Henry won the lottery back then. So Henry, if you're listening, man, I never forgot that piece. So Craig, we talked about getting people into a really great spot here. I'm just going to be a little self-serving here. I'm so curious about where we're going as a civilization here. When I look at the spit and glue, I'm going to keep using that. When I look at the spit and glue setup now, the alarm bells go off in my head. And for all you who haven't done it, when we talk about spit and glue, I'm saying I go on ChatGPT. You can see my videos on LinkedIn, and I'm plugging things in, and it's a little clunky. It's probably very clunky. I've got to basically do what I would do anyway on the website, but it's more just like, haha, look what's going on. And there's some benefits, but there's a lot of me happening. So it's not very like automated. My dad is a plumber. So like when I think of, I have my dad's voice in my head, he'd be saying to me, what's the point of this? Like, why is this happening? My gut tells me that we are setting ourselves up and getting ready for a world very much like you talked about with your children, where remember the Amazon days, et cetera. But I started seeing this as something that is way too user intensive and manual and clunky. Maybe I won't be typing away anymore. Maybe I've just got a cool little thing on, cool little medallion, and I'm just chatting away. Hey, buy this for me. Is that where you see things going? I know it's a huge question, but like, is that the infancy that we're looking at now? Is that what it's going to grow into? Would love to hear what you think.
Yeah. The immediate is like cool. And the immediate is you can go somewhere and give a loose context and it'll like, here's the product for you. And then you click buy and then it'll go buy it for you all through the same interface. That's like, baby steps. And we see that today. I think that the future really becomes, I don't know the best way to say this, but it's like, it's always about democratizing the things that only rich people have access to. Like Uber democratized the chauffeur. There's a bunch of things like this, right? Super wealthy people have like chief of staff, like personal shoppers, right? That just know the things that you want and they'll get them for you on the fly. And so, even, there is like an interface of like wearables, right? And I think about like your dad, for example. My dad does, property management. And these things are smart enough to where like if you could get them to where, I don't think my dad would ever wear Google glasses or even the Ray-Bans, but like even a photo of like you got this busted sink, right? And it's like an American standard sink that you haven't seen before. You take a picture of it. Like these things are so smart enough and they have access to so much information. They'll identify the correct size O-ring and then know to just immediately order it or have it ready for pickup at Dixie Line to where you can go and pick up that specific piece. You didn't have to measure it or go to the specs of that. Like that becomes a form of commerce, right? And that's one for my plumbers and property managers out there. But the other one is like ambient shopping, which I think is really, really cool. And ambient shopping is where, these things, and if you've spent enough time with a ChatGPT, like it does kind of start to understand how you think about things. And so it's not unheard of to think that it's going to understand your preferences, maybe even better than you do, and have a complete access to a variety of SKUs and brands that you might never heard of. And so being able to go out and buy like, hey, here's I know your anniversary is coming up and your wife and you like indie music, like here's Aaron McDonald concert tickets, right? Or like clothes or things like that. Things to where you don't have fingers on the keyboard. And that's where I think things go to where you actually have more of this ambient shopping experience.
Democratizing that kind of luxury thing, it just makes so much sense. It truly does. Well, guys, we've unpacked a lot here. And Jamie, we were just talking about O-rings and sinks. I know that's right up your alley, so I know it is. What are we thinking, guys? Please, I would love to hear from you. Robert, Robert, why are we raising hands? We're family, man. Just jump on in, my brother.
No, and this is really interesting. Is there a known kind of regional element with this as you're looking at traffic? I mean, is there a certain kind of location, country, area where this traffic's coming from? If it's not an individual person being in if I'm in Oakland, California here, and somebody's doing this on my behalf, some agent on my behalf, is there kind of a known network to watch for spikes right now?
What we see is, at least the interesting thing is it's essentially like proxy service, right? Like what we see are like these large and emerging agentic platforms, a lot of them based in the United States, some actually in France, that are doing the primary amount of web search and web crawling, right? And it's kind of an interesting problem. And one of the things that we hear a lot from merchants is that it's not like you're getting the end user's IP address or even location, because the crawling is happening through this intermediary. And that has raised a whole host of problems with folks of like being completely disintermediated from the end customer and becoming like, as an e-commerce merchant, becoming like dumb pipes that just holds merchandise. And that's one of the things that at least I hesitate from when I see people going out and saying like, hey, all I need to do is deal with a single very large platform that has all the sales, and then allowing them to completely own the checkout experience, which is why, our approach is definitely one where it's more of an open internet. You accept multiple platforms. But that's directly to your question. We see a lot of traffic, North American traffic. But again, it's primarily like, I don't know where the end users are unless they're using a KYA token, because it's proxied by their agent interface.
Yeah. And one of the difficulties that I've seen, especially with GPT or ChatGPT's setup, is that it doesn't really identify itself in the same way that in a browser string you might see Perplexity, Claude, etc. So, Robert, I think from a very basic standpoint, those AWS servers that are out of Virginia, even in Toronto, there's a bunch that come through there. You've probably seen spikes in that traffic. That's like your 30,000 foot view, spikes on proxy servers that have like an AWS ISP. And then from there, though, you're kind of just like, oh, I don't know. Is this just traditional bad behavior? Is this just somebody who's got a VPN? Or is this somebody who's transacting agentically? That's where something a little more sophisticated, like a KYA, comes in. Does that get you in? Are you getting any suspicions, Robert? Are you feeling like you might?
No, I mean, yeah, similar. I mean, we use Shopify. I get kind of where the spikes are, and it always surprises me sometimes. Some cities that do spike more than another city. Somebody, they would say it's a smaller city that's spiking bigger than a large city. What's going on there? And I know there are some these server locations and that kind of thing. I was just wondering with this whole new wave of other kind of avenues, is there some sort of kind of like known location similar to the Virginias and that kind of thing?
Craig, I guess it's just all over, right?
It's all over. A lot of it is North America, but I wouldn't say there's any surprises there other than like, well, I'm getting hit with, and here's the problem. It's proxy traffic, right? And so dealing with those bot managers and then even the merchants, like it's indistinguishable from the spam that you've gotten, right? It just looks like your spam has gone through the roof. And like another way to look at that is like Wikipedia. I think their web traffic in the last 6 months is up like 2x. Pretty stable like business, right? I think their web traffic is up like 2x. And similar thing, because they're getting crawled to death from these bots. And of course, donations are flat, right? And so that really what it comes down to is like, because you have this new proxy thing, which has historically been bad news, there needs to be a way of getting the principal's identity through that intermediary to you. And that doesn't really exist yet. And that's really why we think the KYA thing is so important, because you're going to have to stop. You're going to and it's happening already. You got to start bringing up the drawbridges in a lot of these cases, because your server costs are going to forget fraud. Your server costs are going to get melted, right? And that's why KYA becomes so important, because at least you have a look of like, okay, this is a verified individual, and I know that there might be a propensity to buy here.
And you get that verification. And heck, if we're talking about fraud segmentation, guys, I mean, you could let them rock and roll. You know who it is. Maybe you have the slightest bit of like velocity check on it or the slightest bit of inventory control. But to be able to rock and roll in a bot segment, that sounds like I've gone off the reservation here. Just saying that, right? Ryan, I see you come off mute.
Yeah, no, I had a follow-up question on this that's just kind of piquing my brain. I hate to be that guy, but just kind of thinking ahead, like with all the efforts going in, Craig, to kind of like creating a process around this. And you talk about, KYA, which I love. I think that's a great use of that term. What does the next iteration of agentic AI look like? Like, as you know how it works, we all get comfortable. We understand it to an extent. It's a black box, so we don't truly understand it. And then consumers are using it. So what does that next iteration of this look like? And are we prepared for that already, or do we not even know what that is yet?
Yeah. The next iteration that I see is one where early adopters, and I can talk about some of the stuff that we're doing with merchants to make some more comfort here, but folks getting comfortable with the concept of like actually giving an agent a credit card. Right. And what that looks like is, and a lot of this is requirements on the card networks, but a lot of this is like a user comes in to something they can trust. And by something I can trust, like ChatGPT has a lion's share of the market. I think they do have some challenges overcoming. Like, is this agent really going to select the best products for me? Or is this because there's a consulting deal with Target, so it's always going to go get the diapers, even though they're a little bit more expensive? Like, that's kind of a weird thing. But they have the lion's share, right? So it's their market to win. But that said, there's other folks. Consumer Reports is great. They think they have a right to win. I think they have a right to win, that they've never taken corporate ads, right? And they do it completely based on objective results, right? So today you can go to this thing called Ask CR if you're a member of the org. And you can say, like, what's the best nonstick pan, or what's the best toaster, or what's the best, mid-size SUV. And you're getting objective reviews, right? The next step beyond that is being able to say, like, okay, I trust Consumer Reports. I know they have my best interest. I'm going to give it my credit card. And just for folks, like, what that process looks like is you input your credit card and then you bind it to a device, right? Which means that baby step being like, hey, what's the best blender? Well, obviously it's Ninja Bullet blenders, right? You're going to go say, like, okay, I want the 2 liter, whatever that is. You just click buy. Consumer Reports agent will crawl that website. They'll exchange a KYA token saying, hey, this is Ryan accessing ninjashark.com. Select the product, go to checkout. And this is the role that Skyfire plays in the fraud detection, is that when Consumer Reports says, hey, give me a one-time credit card, a virtual card generated off Ryan's card, I don't say yes to that. I hit Ryan with the 2-factor authentication of like, hey, your agent, Consumer Reports, is about to buy a blender. Are you sure you want this, Ryan? And now I have actually like just-in-time decisioning from the user that you opted into this purchase, right? The setup of that, the binding of the device, the connecting of the dice to what's on file at the issuing bank. I don't want to get too crazy here, but like, it might actually decrease fraud if it's done right. Okay, I know people. It might actually be a more secure thing than just having some like human type stuff into a UI somewhere in the world mask their API. So that's what I see. That's what I see next, Brian, is like programmatically these things going out, and it's like generated by a user clicking buy, and then you remove the buy button, and based on your behavior, your intermediary knows that you're looking for blenders. Hey, do you want this, Brian? That's where like the CTAs come in. And then I don't want to get off track here, but like, I think CPMs in ads start going away, and I think the whole world turns into a CPA. So like, it's not about getting eyeballs, it's about actually getting actions to go to the merchant, right? And that's a place where we have a lot of interest from folks of like, how do you actually generate traffic when the ad revenues from Google needs to go somewhere else? And that's like a multi-billion dollar opportunity that, the world is starting to realize.
ROAS set to change forever.
I have so many questions, but I will save them. That was great. It was great, but I have so many questions from my blue collar mindset. So I do appreciate that, Greg.
Well, if we want to blow up Craig's inbox, Craig, where can we find you? How can we get in touch with you for those questions? Where would you send folks?
Yeah. So, we're all friends here, and all the folks that are watching us on the internet, my friends as well. So you can hit me up at my email address in the chat. And then one of the reasons I'm so happy to be on the Fraudcast at the Fraud Ranch is it's Crypto Cowboy on
Oh yeah.
Twitter. Yeah.
I got my boots on today, dude.
So wrangling up some AOV from the agents here on the Fraudcast.
I could die happy now, y'all. You don't follow that up. You just drop the mic, right? Craig, on behalf of everybody here, we thank you for the time, the spirits. I think you've got us all fired up. We're ready to rock and roll. Y'all, this is the highlight of my week, my life. You never fail to put me in a good mood. I hope we got you somewhat close to a good mood today. I hope you enjoy the rest of your week. Welcome to the end of summer and the beginning of fall. I love fall. Let's go Cowboys on Thursday. Boo, and create debate. But y'all, until next week, you have a great, blessed rest of your week, and we'll be seeing you same time, same place. Craig, thank you so much. Adios, y'all.